Hello and welcome to collaborative conversations which may create choices for learning, thinking, and doing. I sincerely extend my gratitude to Matthew Thomas, founder of All India Educators Forum, for providing us this space, this opportunity, this platform to share our ideas and thoughts. My sincere gratitude to all the panel members present over here who have joined in from various time zones across the world. Thank you for your presence. Really appreciate that. Thank you to all the viewers, the valuable viewers and listeners across the world who have joined us today. Your presence, your participation through comments, through questions would be what we are looking forward to. And we will be taking up the questions towards the end. So, welcome all to Learning in the 22nd Century, Unlocking the Next Generation of Learning Perspectives. Almost 23 years into a 100-year plan, L22C has been pioneering since the past 2 decades in digging deep foundations on which new perspectives for the next generation of learning can be considered once again. It is a place where wisdom, vision, excitement, and uncertainty refreshingly mix to form the very foundations. Whether online or offline, communities across all continents, all cultures, all ages, and engaging almost all industries. They're coming together in building a learning environment for those who are prepared to invest in themselves and especially in the things which they don't know. L22C is creating new era structures, that is, um, new era wisdom, new structures, which actually shape ideas and vision into reality, assembling like minded people with like minded thoughts, coming together actually helps us, enables us to tap into the seventh sense. Now, when this seventh sense, when we talk about this seventh sense, it actually creates an energy that fuels creativity, logic, purpose, and value. So, authentic learning is what we're looking at. Authentic learning for anyone, anywhere, any place, anytime, for all ages. That is the vision of L22C, whether it is under 10s, teenagers, young adults, or elders. L22C is for everyone. And learning in the 22nd century, when we talk about that, we all have wisdom, we all have vision, we all have excitement, and we all have uncertainty. So, what is L22C doing? It is bringing us together with our natural traits and inbred genius. That's what L22C is doing. And it also provides unique opportunities to fulfill our desires for doing what we love to do and by engaging ourselves in doing what we are good at and creating choices for what the world needs and then get paid our true worth. So L22C, that is learning in the 22nd century, would be really pleased to join you in becoming an important part of unlocking the next generation learning perspectives. What I have shared just now is just the tip of the iceberg. There is lot more to be explored, but let's begin. There has to be some kind of beginning, so let's begin with this today. And with that, John, I would like to come to you. You have been there with L22C for a good number of years. And your interest is in joyful learning. You also believe in playfulness in learning when it comes to learning. And with an engineering background, you have given a virtual structure to L22C with a lot of practical ideas. So I think it would be really fascinating to understand what you think about origins and language, which are also important themes of L22C. So definitely, we'd be really interested to listen from you, John.
Thank you very much, Nina. And firstly, thank you for this opportunity to be with such a noble audience. We can't see you, but I can see my colleagues here. So wherever you are in the world listening, we deeply appreciate the opportunity you've given us to share with you some of the things we've been learning over the last couple of years. And it's going to be a really interesting afternoon or evening or morning, wherever you are. So very happy to do that. And we were just having a little bit of banter like we do before the session today with the team. This is normal. This is a very normal setting for us. Everyone listening, of course, out there will be sitting wherever they are doing whatever they're doing. But what you'll hopefully experience, rather than just telling you about L22C, I really hope we can give you the experience of feeling it like we do. We're going to have a really interesting time together on the panel. We'll hear things that we don't even know ourselves. You've given me, Nina, this opportunity to say a little bit about two particular aspects of L22C, two of the sort of pillars, if you like, of L22C, about where did it come from, the origins, and about the language. So I'll talk a bit about those, but I'm sure my colleagues will jump in and correct me if I say anything wrong or add something to it all. And what we'll experience together, and the audience will make this happen too. The energy that they're bringing wherever they're sitting. I was just thinking this morning actually about this whole opportunity, and for me the learning happened just when you said, "Could we come and speak?" So, and I was thinking about India too. And I've always had, right since I was a boy, I've had this. India has been one of these fascinating places. I know the audience are probably not all from India, but you're in India, Nina. And I've always been fascinated. When I was a boy, our au pair used to sail on tea clippers from England to India, and with a big wooden chest, and she used to come back and tell us about rogue elephants and all the things. So in my mind, it may be completely wrong, but I have a vision of what India looks like. So my origins, if you like, where I first started to learn about India was from a small boy. And I think this very fact that this session we're having today has come as a result of what's happened there in India will give this whole flavor of today's session quite an Indian feel to it. So I hope that's all right with you. And I was thinking very much around what one of the quotes of Gandhi, he said once about live as if you would die tomorrow and learn as if you would live forever. And the last time I spoke to an audience in India was one of my good friends who I grew up with. He died at a young age. He was in India, and he's not with us anymore. And many of us, we don't know how long we've got, but we're to live. The whole point of learning is about living. When we talk about the origins of L22C, we look at learning as a vital thing, just like living, you know. And if you're going to live for, as if you would die tomorrow, then if we only had today, what would we want to learn today? Learning is really something that we have to do. It's like breathing. Why do we learn? Why do we learn? It's because we have to. You know, and so there's no other place I'd rather be than here with you now, learning together, because this is important, and what we're going to learn today, it has to be important. When I send my children out in every morning to school, they're learning stuff that's totally irrelevant for their life. If they only had today, I certainly wouldn't want them to be learning what they're learning. There will be lots of other things that will be more important. So I think the origins of L22C is really to get a grip on what is really important in life, and learn what we need to learn in order to do. This is not acquiring knowledge, acquiring intellect. It's about getting what we need to learn. And just lastly on that theme then, learn as if you were to live forever. Who knows what the future is? We talk about learning in the 22nd century. It's a sort of 100-year plan. You said we're 23 years already into it. There's still a 70 odd years to go. You know, what does the future look like? We have no idea how to learn as if we would live forever. But actually, if you want to look far ahead, you've also got to learn. You've got to go back, because in the scale of things, to the further ahead you want to look, the further back you need to look. And so we spend a lot of time looking at the origins, and how did we used to learn. And very quickly, and I'm going to bring my colleague David in soon, because he's the one who got me roped into this whole thing. Okay. And so how do we learn? I'm an engineer, as you've said, and I was amazed at all the time I taught in university, engineering. One of the key things as an engineer you think about is there's actually always a simplicity beyond the complicated. So what is the material that you're working with, and what's the geometry? Whenever you're designing anything, it's just down to two things: materials and geometry. That's what you've got to play with. And if we think about learning and the very vision that we've got in L22C, and I'll bring David in a moment, this vision to create a place where you could learn. What is it you're working with? You're working with people. And if it's about people, it's about the material you're dealing with is the brain, the mind, wherever learning's stored in us. Okay, where all the synapses are. Is that right, Matt?
And the heart.
And the heart, precisely. Yeah, exactly. So we're dealing with real things. If learning really is to happen, it's about the heart. It's about the firing of synapses. It's all the neuroscience of it all. Wherever learning happens, so we've tried to really focus on that. Now, I know I'm whizzing along here, but I'm going to just jump a bit out of all the learning and go back to the origins of L22C. And 2 years ago, when David Hollands walked into my life, or crashed into my life, I should say, and said he was digging a hole. And you referred to that already, Nina, the origins. You said about the hole that we've been digging. And David, we met each other, and you said you were digging a hole. And I'm a geotechnical engineer, so I thought that's interesting. I like digging. I like digging holes. And then you started to tell me about this village you had been building in Bulgaria, and how this was the sort of epicenter of learning in the 22nd century. Do you want to say a little bit about that, David?
Well, yeah, I thought you'd rope me into this, but thank you very much. Basically, I sort of had this seventh sense, this vision, which many of us have, and I thought, look, two young children wondering where the future was, and had this moment that said, maybe we need to build a community that resonates with all this learning that we've got to do. All this was back in the last century, actually, 1999. And I just had this vision, which we all have. And I decided that what I would really like to do is build a community, a village, a place, a space where we could learn off of each other, the stuff that we were rapidly sort of forgetting. And it was the era of that the internet was approaching rapidly back then in 1999, 2000. And that's where it all came from. Just, creativity, thinking, what if not, why not? And anything's possible. And if you work at it, it's more likely to be probable. So that's where the origin started. Just a few thoughts about how people learn together forgotten values, and sort of create the future rather than let it happen to us. So that's the sort of the seed, as it were.
Yeah. It is, yeah. And so you took, so what, when I met you, and after that period of that village then, and what you'd created there in Bulgaria, then this vision when you came back to the UK to create another kind of village, but this time not so much of a physical space, but a community of learners. And that's where we thought, okay, how do we actually make that happen? How do we connect people from all parts of the world? And the vision got bigger and bigger, if you like. How could you learn anything, not just how to operate a little village, but how could you take the learning from there and then build a community where you could learn anything from anyone at any time, anywhere? That was the kind of the big, hairy, audacious goal, if you like.
Yeah, and it was literally no more than those thoughts. How could we do it? You know, it was really a question of what's missing in this whole sort of life learning. I'm not from an educational background. You know, my life has been sort of, I suppose one could call it entrepreneurial, doing various things throughout industry, different subjects, different industries, relatively successful, always excited about what we haven't discovered yet and trying to be creative. And it sort of, it all came around. Well, it's just community, isn't it? It's the kids. If you sit and listen to the kids, you could learn so much. Stop telling them what we've already learned years ago, which is probably not relevant anymore. Let's listen to them. And then what's really relevant, if our grandparents are telling us stuff that they really stand by, it's often founded on just good basic, living and ethics. And
completely.
About
talking about children. Children also, they have these inbred geniuses.
Yeah.
They already have it in them.
Yeah.
And
I was one once, Nina. We were all one once.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I just want to jump in because that's how I was dashing down some notes beforehand, and I was recalling this past week. I'm a teacher, and one of my students just turned 12, and the very next day she came to class and she said, and I had to write it down afterwards. She said, "What are we doing? Okay, what are we doing? We're going to school so we can go to a good college or a good university." And she's thinking it through as she's thinking it because it doesn't make sense to her. She says, "So we're going to go to school. We're going to go to a good university or a good college so we can get a good job, so that we can make a lot of money, so that maybe we can buy like Lamborghinis and Ferraris and get all this stuff. And then we can die and not take any of it with us." Doesn't make any sense. And I looked at her and I was speechless. I was like, wow, I'm so glad you realize that as soon as you do. And it sparked a conversation in the class. And that's what, when you mention David and Nina, the genius of children, they see this. They see this path that it's everything is possible. And that's not one of the things they really want to join, to just sign up for a life of a compliance.
And that origins, John, and I know we want to move on to language, which is part of the origins, you know, what we used to say, what we used to think, et cetera, and is what we used to think and say the way we communicate, like that young girl there, Matt, you know, in your classroom. You know, thank goodness she had a teacher in you who had the time to listen to her and not listen to answer, but to listen to understand, wow, where's she coming from? And of course, that question has been brought up from, you know, her lifestyle, where she is, her parents, her DNA, and all that stuff. That if we're not aware of that, we don't quite know why these genius moments are coming from. But they come from every angle, and everyone's got a perception on it. And John, that goes back to you, Nina. Sorry, the language element which you mentioned at the off.
Yeah,
it's how we present who we are, what we do, what we be, not only in speech.
Yes. We'd like to know how language plays a role in that, John.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, the language, you know, and the whole literacy of how we communicate in this learning environment across, you know, if you are connecting people from all nations, from all tribes, from every village, to go back to that and sorry, to actually connect all of those things up there. How do you do that unless you've got some common way of communicating? And the language of L2TC, what we're exploring, this new era of language, this literacy, this how do we communicate? How do we connect with one another across generations, across cultures, across countries, and so on? We actually don't even talk about countries in L2TC, for example, because these are man-made fabrications. We often look at the world, for example, instead of it as a whole series of countries, as zones of population zones. So that's where the language is changed from countries, for example, to regions or to zones, or so there's a whole way of talking that's needed. You've used some words this morning or just now, Nina, about the some of the core parts of the language, if you like, of L2TC. You talk about wisdom and vision and uncertainty and excitement. Those are key concepts within the language of L2TC. And effectively, you'll hear that throughout a lot of the conversations, how we bring these words through and use them very much. And I think the some of the even this, for example, and everything is moving all the time. We know language as soon as you write it down. Children, for example, as soon as they start to write, Nina, you know much better than with your work with children. If you start to impose the alphabet on them too quickly, or you start to say this is how you're to write,
they switch off.
Switch off. I love watching my children on Minecraft typing to their cousins anywhere in the world. The language they use, the words they use, exactly what they're saying, but the spelling's atrocious. But it's fine because it's lovely to see they're communicating. Okay. So there's an unwritten language. It's constantly evolving. It's not. We try not to capture it too quickly or form it too quickly. We have part of the language of what we do in one of the components, if you like, of L2TC is how we learn together in groups, small groups of people. We call them assemblies. And that's a language we use. It's a very different. If you sit in an assembly at a school, they have a certain view of all sitting there in rows and the head teacher coming out like you, Matt. You come out to all your kids and hold forth.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, John. And I feel that, language is also essential, especially for, I think people like Osita and Luna, they and even Matt, all of you have traveled across the world, and you have met people, cultures, and Osita, if I could come to you, you are one of the first persons who have joined L22C from Africa. And you're the director of learning in Africa. You believe in going beyond classrooms and campuses and universities for a global perspective in learning. So, how do you think that if you include ethics and people, so how do you feel? What is your perspective in regarding this? If we are talking about learning in the 22nd century, what are your views? We are really eager to hear from you, Sita. And thank you, John. Thank you for your views on origins and language. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nina. And thank you, John, for going back to origins. That's the raw beginning. And my friend David, whenever you wade into issues, you bring new perspectives to them. And that has been my blessing, knowing you and working with you. Very simply, it is simplicity of L2TC that is amazing, because when you say we believe in doing the right thing, it sounds simple, but that's ethics. You see, we are not doing things right. We are doing the right thing, and it takes commitment to get there. The issue is, how do you know the right thing? It's ethics. So when creating new learning, we understand the perspectives of every individual's ethical position. The issue is we are all different. And do not get me wrong. Culture could be next door. I remember as a pupil teacher, I was 16 when I started teaching. Just like Matt, I'm a teacher. But now I see learning as more important than teaching. As this young teacher, my first day in class in kindergarten, I had my scheme of work and I had my timetable. The timetable says arithmetic, English, and creative arts, singing. So I took my chalk on the blackboard and wrote arithmetic because that was the first class. And one girl, young kindergarten girl, raised up her hand and said, "No, sir, let's sing." And I said, "How do you mean sing? My timetable says arithmetic." So I wrote arithmetic again, and she fell on the floor and cried for 5 minutes. She was wailing, she was screaming, she was crying. Then my head teacher, hearing the cry, came to me and said, "What's going on here, Osita?" I said, "This is my first day in class, and this." She said that we have to sing. And the head teacher said, "If she says you have to sing, that is the timetable." Damn, that was what changed my life completely. 16-year-old, first day in class, this young girl, and you know the story, she went on to become a minister in my country.
Oh, wow.
She went on to become a minister. She rose, that child became my child. And after some time, she overtook me, became special minister for some program. So what I'm saying in effect
Is
is
she
that
singing? Is she singing still, Osita?
to one culture, to one person, to one teacher, will not be ethical to the other. This is a child, kindergarten years, 4-year-old child, a baby. She said, "No, let's sing." I said, "No, we can't sing because the timetable says arithmetic first." And you know the truth, after we sang, she sat down and took the arithmetic and took the English language. And she was happy. The entire class was happy. So what we're saying is that each community has a perspective on differences, political, economic, commercial. There is also always a huge difference. But understanding these differences and knowing why the differences is a cornerstone for future learning is essential. Because that is what LTTC does. We are not creating anything new. We are just saying that because we know that we know nothing, because we know that learning brings an entirely different perspective to our lives and the lives of people we serve, what is most important is creating that cornerstone that makes learning a co-creation of everybody who is involved. So what am I?
Osita, can I just give an example of that?
Please do, please, David.
We were talking about this the other day. When you're in this creative mode and you accept, like your young daughter, how many years ago that was, to say really what she was saying is, "Whoa, hang on a minute, this is important. You need to know I want to sing," and that's
absolutely
in her that she hadn't been suppressed. And what's important, I think, at this stage is, we're not talking about school. L22C is not about school and school children. It's about life and learning. So this happens, as we grow up, we see all this, and when you get to my ripe old age, and I know you've had one more year experience than me, Asita, and you can smile with that nice smile face. And you, Matt, John, you be careful because you're getting close to us. Nina, you're perfect. But our ages and where we are, we talk about this as not what age you are, but what decade of life are you in?
Absolutely.
This is like language, wasn't it? And how naive of us to say, which decade of life are you in, young lady? And she says, well, I'm in my, I'm 13, so I'm in my second decade. And there you are, stood up there in your fifth decade, and she's trying to get you to learn, to open us up. Can we
absolutely, David, amazing.
And
when I recognized her, she became mine because I needed to learn more from her. And she was this calm child, nothing else, nothing more. But the fact just like you said now, policies that are raised from ethics are just practices that have evolved. That's the basic fact. Any policy that you see that it's a function of ethics, go back, look well. You see that there are practices that have evolved, and there are a few ethical policies that are written.
And
John just said it. Language.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I'm just saying that's what John, you were saying.
Absolutely.
Go back to the
About language. I mean, how do you evolve the language that communicates? Do you just start writing the policy? This is English. Okay, like in Africa, like in my country, this is Hausa language. This is the way it should be spoken. No, it is never written, but it's communicative, and it's both a tool and a vehicle. So when you talk ethics, when we talk ethics in LT2C, like I said, we need to be consistently focused on doing the right thing. If we don't, when we don't, we're not learning. So what we have done in the last couple of months, myself and my colleagues at the learning experience, is that if you look at personal ethics between people, family, and community, all have been compromised. I mean, how else do you explain it? We all have our different dreams. We all have our different future plans. But by the end of the day, when you listen and learn, and you find that there's really nothing else to do than creating an opportunity for you to grow a foundation, particularly on my continent. Most of the things that we've done not right, because my position about ethics is doing the right thing. Most of the things that we've done not right are the things that have been given to us by people who don't know what we need. In education, it's called felt need. I know what I need. That child in my class knew she wanted to sing. And did they end well? Yes, because after we all sang, because I learned the song, and then started clapping and singing and dancing. After we finished that, she sat back and did her arithmetic. 1 + 1, 2, 2 + 2, 4, and then language, and that was it. But by the end of the day, I sat back in my class, and I was thinking, did I really have the authority to impose on her what I thought she should learn? No. Because she knew what she wanted at that age, and that changed my life permanently forever. And I know that my friend Matt, the teacher, will resonate with me, because if children come to you with their perspectives and you don't listen, you've lost so much. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I can't agree with you more, Osita. It's I think the language we're talking about, a big part of that is the language of listening, and just taking the time to listen, because naturally kids are curious, and as they go on in school, we see them ask less and less questions. And now we even have algorithms that feed kids the things that they would have wondered. So when they write something in Google, up come all the questions that they might want to ask, and we don't give them the space to even think about what they might wonder. And for me as a teacher, it's not about the knowledge that I can impart, because again, Google's great, and Google will always know more than me, but Google doesn't listen, and Google doesn't push as a teacher and guide in a direction where the student is actually interested. And that's the beauty of the language of listening.
Matt,
Yeah, and
That's absolutely profound. Language of listening. Yeah.
yes.
Luna, you pop in, because I know you've been trying to.
I know. I love what you just said there, Matt, about the language of listening, and I think it's important to broaden what we think of as language. It's beyond language, is beyond words. I've traveled to different countries. I've spent a year in India. I lived in Vietnam for a year and a half, and I couldn't speak the language. And in India, there's many different languages. So yet I had to get by in daily life. And it's communication beyond the words, there's even sign language, signals, there's your energy that you bring forwards. here we're sort of talking about language as in the way we communicate with each other, kind of beyond the words, and it's really from that space that's really important as well. So it's like the whole energetics, the listening as well as the speaking, the space that's coming from.
And you, Luna, you've come from a corporate background. I mean, you've been in sort of London banking, shall we say, if we're going to put a bracket around it. So you come from a completely different perspective. I know the stories you've got, which I know thousands of people have got, from that industry, if we can call it that. That same child is there in the boardroom or the office corner saying, "I want to sing." Why are we doing this corporate stuff this way? Can we? Yeah, you've told me many stories that you've said.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Wondering why are these people not, and L2C is not about children; it's about all of us, all age groups. So we've got exactly these same scenarios that we're erring it towards the classroom era because of the audience. But if we were in a tourism audience, we'd be realizing this and then bringing it and giving examples of the classroom. So your experiences there, Luna, are massive on this very sound-safe issue, and we're talking about people that are in their fourth and fifth, their 30s and 40s, their fourth and fifth decade of life, in a job, earning money, doing the thing we aspire to do when we're youngsters, and they've still got that language communication problem because they're different people trying to get out and communicate. Is that fair?
Yeah, very clear. And then, my last word on ethics is that the ethics of L2C are founded on the respect for differences we all share around our world. I mean, if I don't respect what makes us different, David and I mean, each time we sit to do our conversations, we ask questions, personal questions, and she tells me this, I'll tell him that. And then he smiles when I let him understand the intricacies of being African and living in Africa and doing what I'm doing. Because as I speak with you now, yesterday, I had to go look for three other networks to be able to stay in this conversation today. And David does something about it. He said, don't stress it, relax. And I found that alone gives me the foundation to learn more, because even if that meeting does not work because of connectivity, there's a learning in that process too. And that for me is the foundation for the differentials that we'll have to deal with. Thank you so much, Nina, for that question.
No, I got from there, John, we need to write this down. This is an engineering book. I got intricacies of differences. See,
yes.
Yes. The intricacy. If we don't understand those, we need to understand them not to answer back, but just to get a perspective of, that's where they're coming from. This is everyday stuff. But Luna, I was going to ask you about the boardroom, because we work, in those commercial arenas. I mean, members of L2C come from all walks of life, all ages, all walks of life. But those differences are often the boundaries of learning or exploring deeper into what we're trying to do.
Yeah, because my corporate life was very different. It's wasn't really about actively learning. It was very different type of learning that you do in a corporate environment. It's learning skills so you can do your job, as opposed to learning as an expression of who I am and what I want to do, and coming from that, being driven by passion, which is kind of intrinsic and coming from within me. It's very much more, but for me anyway, when I was in that corporate life, it's being driven by external achievements, a desire to get that promotion, that title, and the skills, the learning that I wanted to do was very much around that. I mean, I became a chartered accountant. I absolutely hated it. I was in tears before every exam, saying, I'm not going to do this again. This is awful. And then I'll go and do it again. And to me, that's not living life. But I did that because I thought that was what I was supposed to do. Because I thought, you know, if I go and be a chartered accountant, it means I'm going to earn a certain wage, and you know, there are always jobs, and I'm going to have stability. And yes, there is something in that. We all need our, you know, our basic physical needs met. But it was really coming from this like scarcity, fear-based mindset, and it was never going to bring me happiness. Which in the end was the reason why I had to leave, because I was like, you know, I'm climbing the career and I'm earning good money. I should be having a good life and being happy. And yet I felt like I wanted to die inside. It was that drastic. I realized I literally couldn't live my life that way. And I wish I'd sort of had that opportunity to explore for myself what I wanted to learn.
And I won't ask which decade of life, we can work it out, but about sort of 10 years ago. So that point, how this all links together, because this is the point, isn't it, John? You know, you're in your engineering world. You know, if you make a bad mistake when you're building a probably billion-dollar, not trillion-dollar dam network in the middle of somewhere to feed water to a population that's growing, you've got to make some decisions there, which are sort of lifelong decisions. Creating a dam in civil engineering, and there's won't go into the intricacies, but those you need to learn about the differences between soil and concrete, for example. There couldn't be two more extremes. One is natural and free flowing. The other one's humans have made a cocktail of something and called it concrete, and hoping the two actually provide a system of holding back, you know, billions of tons of water. And that's your engineering thing, and that learning you've often shared with us. And how can you bring an engineering analogy into conversation? Well, that's what happens all the time. And that I think is, Nina, L2C, your point. You know, it's learning anything from anyone, anywhere, of any age, and just being able to listen and say, okay, how can I stick that into my learning about my subject? And that's
and probably the biggest subject. I know, Nina, you want to keep us on track, and you got the hardest job, Nina, to try and keep us on track. You know, but one of the biggest things that we want to learn is about ourselves. You know, you can learn about your subject to be an accountant or build a dam or whatever it might be, but fundamentally, we've been given this one opportunity. We've been given this one body, and actually really discovering who am I. You know. And learning about that, you know, we often refer back to the ikigai, you know, what you love doing, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid. Clearly, where those all come together, and to really learn why was I born? You know, what's my purpose? What is my raison d'etre? Who am I? What was I called to do? That's the most fascinating topic on the planet, you know, because. And I think that's what we spend a lot of time on.
That's brilliant. Actually, you know, when you, David, you talked about engineering and Luna's banking background. And when we look at life, we have so many choices. We have choices in learning, and that actually we don't know as to what, like Luna said, that, you know, what is that intrinsic motivation, that intrinsic purpose. So how do I understand that among so many varied choices that I have? And with that, like, you know, I'll come to you, Matt. You've been, you know, Hawaii has been your home. You were born in America, and you've been a teacher, presently in Thailand. And teacher with a difference. You believe in, you know, giving opportunities to children, opportunities of experience, and simply to do. And what do you think? How does choices and learning are embedded in L22C? What are your views regarding that?
Yeah, thank you, Nina. So many great points of conversation that it's. I want to keep coming back to them. And as a teacher, unfortunately, a lot of times students see teachers as teachers, not as learners. And so that's a myth that I'm always busting with students of, no, I'm learning. I'm learning about how do we work as a community? How do I build this community? Ask me questions that I don't know, and I'm happy to say I don't know. Let's find that out together. And that's something that's different about L22C is it's not about, what I know. It's not about what anybody knows. It's about what we don't know. And that's different than anything I've ever experienced before, because there's so much ego in the world of trying to push what we know. And there's not even space to enter conversations because everybody's jumping on top of each other, trying to tell them what they know. And for me, when we talk about choices, we do. We have a finite time on this planet. And so making those choices that are going to lead to our happiness, because living in the era that we are living in now, where there's so much, it's so bent on innovations, on trying to beat our way out of a box, on trying to make things faster, on trying to make things smaller, on thinking that the next gadget is going to make us happier. And in the end, a lot of times it disconnects us. Think about our cell phones or the internet in itself and how we might feel if we don't have it. When what I love about L22C is it's getting together people, different skills, different decades, from different places, and having conversation and being willing to listen and learn and say, I don't know anything about that, but gosh, I'm interested. I'd like to know more about that. And the ability and the trust to know that all that we need to know is in our midst. There's an abundance, more than an abundance of people that have the wisdom if we give them a chance to share it. And so that, coming back to that topic of choices, do we make that choice to be around people like we have here in this panel that are honest with themselves, that are trusting of others, and listen and learn together? So I find L22C to be a special place where, as David mentioned earlier, it's not only that things are possible, but that they're very probable, and that's a rarity.
Yeah,
That people feel that way.
that's
on that point of choices, Matt. That we have, moving away from school in our job and life. We have, because time is taken away from us because of the job. We'll talk about this later in one of the other themes, which is prosperity. That element of time is robbed from us, or we give it away. However we want to box it up, it doesn't matter. And therefore it restricts those choices that are available to us that we just miss. And I think another element of this learning is that just being constantly open to these choices that are out there, but we miss because our time is taken up, our focus, our responsibilities, whatever it is, for earning the money to pay the food, to do the thing, to do the job, to keep the da-da-da-da-da. And we're left with no time to look at those other choices. And often they don't knock your door down. They just float past. And if you're not alert to them or aware, you'll miss them. And probably, I mean, in L22C, that's the whole purpose of what we're doing under the theme choices, is how do we open up more to what those choices could be that are sort of asking for you? Because we're genius. We're good. Like John said, we're good at, what are we good at? What do we love doing? What do we believe the world needs? And how can we get paid for it? If we're not looking for that through another choice, and I know there's a lot of people who are very happy with what they do, how they spend their time, but this L22C is about learning what else is out there that we could resonate with. And that's
David, what you're talking about is what I've had that feeling. I've had that feeling. Every conversation we have, it's the ingenuity that's sparked. So somebody says something that makes me go, oh, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
And we go down a different pathway rather than this very confined curriculum of sorts that we need to follow this to get here, to get to this. We allow there to be space to explore together, and that exploration leads to greater choices that maybe we don't even know exist.
I think that's relevant with Osita. So I'm just looking at the connector there, Matt. With the CETA, with Africa, with all its countries, and you're teaching me. I'm learning about through you. You're not teaching me anything. I'm learning because I want to about all these choices that have been maybe suppressed. I mean, we want to be careful what language you use here because we're not political or economic or whatever. We're just getting on with learning about life. A lot of those choices are starting to appear once again in Africa between different countries. But they're realizing actually there is a different way if we just stop and look at ourselves and what we're capable of. And you're seeing a lot of choices starting to open up in all sorts of areas.
Yeah, what is unique about my continent is that even when we identify the choices, even when we know where it leads, even when we know that learning from the choice perspective, it's real and it's useful, we go in the other direction because we have a different mindset. So what L2C is encouraging me to do on my continent is that we create an opportunity for these choices to come to the fore. You don't just talk about choices when you don't know where you want to go. I'm talking about our leaders. I'm talking about people who are in power. We're talking about most times we call them prodigals in power because we put them there and they trample on us. So what choices do we have if we want to remain the way we are to be able to grow from where we are? And then, like Matt said, there are choices that are there we don't even know that they exist. So how wide how widely can we do this? How far can we go? Can we open our eyes so wide that we begin to identify them? But like David will always say week after week, this is about you being ready and willing to learn. Learn the things that you don't know but are useful, as opposed to what they write in syllabus in regular education programs that you don't need. This is where we all stand, and that's where we should go.
And I think, Matt, coming back to you. Sorry, I'm just trying to build the connectors here for the audience. That everything we're talking about, these themes, Nina, that you're introducing, if the audience has forgotten, but we don't. In L2C, we're all, whatever the conversation, John, you're the stippler on this, the ringmaster. Whatever the conversation drifts towards, there is a subject heading about what we're talking about. So are we talking about origins now? Is it ethics? What are those two sentences? What's that idea? Is that about choices? We'll come on to Luna in a minute. We're about space and the comfort that you have to be in to be able to be less risk averse and more comfortable. So every time we speak here, we've got within L2C this word that we know the conversation is resonating around, and it's the interconnection. If we're flowing,
and I'm so glad, David, that each one of us is bringing out the true essence of L22C through this conversation, because it is not something which we have prepared, or we are just sharing our own experiences, our own thoughts, and which is so authentic in this place. And the comments that are coming in, which are being posted over here, are just amazing, because people, what Matt spoke about, communities, the real communities, it's happening live over here, Matt. And it's just amazing. I'm really enjoying the conversations, plus the audience. And I think we are achieving to some level what we are aspiring towards. So that's a great achievement over here today,
I
according to
think
me, what I feel.
I think one of the phrases John uses to keep us on track. Listen, the rules are there are no rules. So we just freelance, but we're always guided back to these 11 themes, which we'll talk about
Yeah.
towards the conclusion. that is
Yeah.
the nervous system, the DNA that's running between our collective wisdom and vision, excitement, and uncertainty that we all bring. But it's what we actually bring to the table is our what we don't know. And that's where the ego disappears. Luna, you know, I know you love this because you've been in a world that requires the opposite, and you just can flourish with what you don't know. It's really important to ask a question that you think, I'm sure everyone knows this, but I don't know, so I'm going to ask it. And you realize that 8 people around the table also, I'm glad you asked that question. I didn't know either. And suddenly that conversation is inspired through not restriction of the subject, it's actually, it's empowered by the unknown. And that's where the magic happens, Matt. You know, you're going to just finish up on this whole learning aspect of.
Yeah, and David, I think it's intriguing too to note that I've never been in a room other than Zoom with all of you.
No, I've never met you.
This feeling that we can have, we've been able to do from however many kilometers away at different time zones. That's where we are in 2022. So to think about our plan for, you know, the next 100 years, it's fascinating to think of what's possible if this is happening so quickly. Just on learning, I just want to touch back on learning, that it's something that I'm sure many of our listeners are like me, and it's something that being a teacher, I live it. I eat it, I sleep it. I can't get away from it, and I don't want to, because I really love education, but I'm not always proud of the systems within which I'm teaching, and how it's become something of compliance and something of force, because I think learning has been given a bad name by the name of school, and so school, we think of tests, we think of the teacher in the front and they know everything. We think of a standardized curriculum. We think of being embarrassed by the things we don't know. We think about getting a certificate. We think about all the stress and the homework. It has a lot of negative connotations, which it's really unfortunate, because then sometimes people think, oh, I'm dumb. I don't know anything. In which case they know a tremendous amount. And it's unfortunate the experience is that way, because they probably came into it like every other kid does, curious about the world, wanting to learn, and sometimes leaving it delusional with their head down and forced into a job that they might not want to do, when really this world is full of possibility. And so something with L22C, it's just that. It's the choices that we make to be around people that also, yeah, they want answers, but they're more fueled by questions and by listening to others, and really coming back to the nature of why we're here. And we're here to learn, and we're here to make this planet, a better place for everyone. So going back to how I started this evening, was that student. It's wonderful that we've got kids in our midst that they can see that already, and to know that L22C is not, it's for everyone. We've heard that several times today, that it's for everyone, anyone, anywhere, doing anything at any time. And it's creating those choices because we're honest with ourselves about wanting to learn more, and knowing that doesn't necessarily, typically from my experience, happen best when it's confined to 4 walls and 1 teacher. But we're all teachers.
Thank you, Matt, for those inspiring words. David, I would like to understand from you what Matt said about schools and learning. They're separate, 2 separate things, and but our mindset, or people's mindset, is always associated with learning and schools.
Okay.
School is associated with learning since, I mean, the past, it has been going on like this. So my question to you is, there is a question in the chat, if you would like to take up that question.
Sure.
So do you mean, by Sufyan, he's saying that our school is going to be no longer. So is that what you mean by? this?
No, not at all. I mean, L22C. I think Matt sort of summarised it there, and I'm conscious that we're just sort of live conversation about what we do. So we're trying to put across L22C as a safe place to learn anything from anybody at any time, and it really is that. So it couldn't be further from the school environment, but the school. Is education. It's where you go to learn information. You're told a curriculum, and we know all that. But most of the population, or the majority of the population, have all left school, college, university, and those opportunities to go to the next lesson, as you would in school, don't apply. We're thrown out into the world auditorium, and we're left with, unless you've really got to go for a job and get a certificate on a quick short course, or a 10-minute Zoom course from somebody who qualified last week and they're now teaching you how to qualify this week. And I'm being slightly sarcastic, but it's not far from the truth. That instant gratification doesn't give you anything other than knowledge. And everyone who's left school, which is the majority of us, and probably all of us listening today, certainly all of us speaking, we're moving. That's where the biggest challenges are. And we don't have teachers and students in L22. We have explorers and Sherpas. And what you have to understand is you are both an explorer and a Sherpa at the same time. No matter how many decades you've been alive, you are a Sherpa and an explorer. So you've got a lot to give and a lot to learn. And most people want to give what they know. As Matt said, and as Luna will come to Luna in less than a minute, I'm sure, to speak about the spaces that you're comfortable in doing that when you're 45 and you're really thinking, I've missed the boat here. What am I going to do for the next 20 years or whatever? Or you're 17 and you're thinking, what do I do? I don't want to create another app. And so that choice of what do I do, L22C is offering that platform, that audience, that community globally to actually ask that question. I need to learn more, and I don't know who to learn it from. And we haven't got any teachers, because I think just on the screen today, I could probably count 50 wise subjects that between us we could share with someone of our experience and wisdom, of what I've done, what Sita, each of us have got, backgrounds in life, because we share those decades of life. We can direct and help someone into, questions that they might have to what they want to learn. And if we don't know, we'll direct them. Where to? To somewhere, anywhere in the world that we know, that's got that wisdom and experience with excitement and uncertainty that you can share with. So what is
Dave, that just one thing before I go back to Nia. One thing that you said there, which is really important, is you're not telling people, you're not learning things, you're not acquiring knowledge. When you said there's about 10 or 15 or 50 different subjects in the room here, these are things which people have actually done. You're not telling them how to do something. We live in an industry full of people telling you how to do everything, But actually, what L22 is fundamentally about, the learning that's here, is the learning in order to be able to do something. And it might sound obvious, but it's not so obvious, often. Actually, so the whole idea of a Sherpa is someone who's gone that way already and has got there, has climbed the mountain and come back and can tell you what to do. And I think that's really the kind of learning that we spend a lot of time on here, is who do I know who's actually done that already? Who do I know? Yeah. The best way to learn is from someone who's actually walked that path, trodden that way, and come back and said, this is how to do it. And so the efficiency, never was there a KPI, a key performance indicator that I ever found was how much learning per pound per minute or per dollar per minute, But if you want to do something or learn how to do it, you want to talk to someone who's a crafts person. They've mastered that that trade or industry, or they've made a garment, or they've done something. They'll tell you exactly what to do in the shortest space of time, just through being with them. And it's the apprenticeship as it should be. You know.
Yeah, the
You
idea
see,
of Sherpa and Explorer.
John, sorry, sorry, Nina, my
Please,
apologies.
please go ahead.
What you just said now resonates with me as an enterprise builder. I run an entrepreneurship program. I don't hire so-called teachers who are not entrepreneurs. It's a waste of time. What will they teach? Some of them just carry the big books, open them up and read the poetry to the students. It's a waste of time because they don't know what to share. They don't know what learning is, and they don't see the possibility of the classroom or the learning environment being something that should come from their experience. So teachers are just there to say what someone has said before. But when I hire my teachers, my enterprise builders, I hire them because of what they do, what they know, and how they have succeeded in doing what they do.
And I think that's a great point, Asita, but it's one perspective. And if I come back to the question you asked us about, Nina, it's important to answer the question if we can. If not to answer, to give an answer, to address the question, to create another question. And that's really one fundamental difference with L2TC. We're not questioning to find out. Questioning to answer. We're questioning to find out more. So that question we had from the audience earlier about how does this disrupt schooling? It doesn't. It's got nothing to do with school education per se. There are teachers. They are there for a purpose and a reason. They're for the same reason that students are there, for the same reason the whole infrastructure of education in a school, a college, university is an institution of the globe. Okay? Are we going to change that? No. Do we want to change it? No. What do we want? What is our purpose? Is that after school, things change and learning doesn't stop. It's like John said earlier, it's like breathing. If you stop breathing, guess what happens? If you stop learning, guess what happens? In fact, I often say, if I had the choice between stopping breathing and stopping learning, I'd choose to stop breathing. Why? Because around me will be enough people who would have the desire to resuscitate me. If I stopped learning, nobody would care. Okay?
Yeah.
Fortunately, we can't control breathing. It's a natural thing, but learning we control. So what Asita said about teachers is a perspective of it, but we're not talking about teachers because teachers are managers of children in a certain time, like they are in any other industry. And like all these other industries that make the world go round, they're very isolated because by their very nature, Luna's going to tell us this any second now, that they're in this space, this place, which basically they're restricted to, and they either enjoy or get paid enough to stay there. Whether that's tourism, let's take a few, tourism, education, banking, industry, retail. You often find that people are stuck in those because they haven't broken out into choices and they realize the world's changing and we realize it's changing because that's why we're learning for the 22nd century. We're not learning for next month, or the next budget, or the next audit, or the next idea that's going to pop out the internet that if we don't get in early, we're going to miss the whole boat and be landed with a whole liability. No, the schooling is here as long as the society that we live in requires it.
So it's here to stay. Yeah.
So educate first, then what? I don't know. We do best we can. So what L2C is doing is creating a community and a space that you're comfortable, that you can ask anything of anyone, anytime, any place, of any age.
Yeah. Thanks, David.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. So, Luna, let me come to you. You've been on your own holistic health journey in the last 6 years, which involved living in India for a year. You've studied Ayurvedic medicine and yogic philosophies that resulted in a shift away from consulting the status quo in healthcare and learning globally. So your traveling experience has enabled you life learn many cultures. I'm sure of that, and it would be really interesting to understand what you would like to say on spaces, places, and consumption, how you understand that in the perspective of LT2C.
Yeah, sure. So I'll try not to talk all day because space and place is probably my favorite theme that we have in L2TC. So I'll try not to get too carried away. So yeah, to me, and this is my perspective, right? My understanding. So everybody has their own slightly different perspective. The place is really it's really what we're talking about here is it's around either the physical locations or the online locations. And the actual kind of infrastructure and the network that we want to build. I think everybody on this call has already said around, it's changing the approach to learning, it's being active learning, it's creating choices. So then how do we create that actual infrastructure, that actual networking, the communities together so that we can actually bring people together so that when someone wants to learn something, they can find somebody that they can learn from. And that's really what how I think of places is really around like the networking and the infrastructure enables us to learn what we want when we want in a way that works for us. And then the space is sort of everything that happens outside that sort of physicality. And space to me is really what facilitates kind of the natural flows of learning. So for me, I believe we actually, as human beings, we are learning all day, every day. And that it's going on in my brain. My brain is constantly processing things and I'm not even aware of it. And so it's really the space that we're kind of actually learning in. And space is really kind of quite an abstract concept, and I think of it in a few terms. So the first is really around creating a sort of safe space, and that's really knowing intrinsically for myself that it's okay to explore what I do not know, to say I don't know. So when I was working in banking as a contractor, you do not meetings and say I don't know. If you don't know, I bluffed the answer, made it out like I knew the answer. But really, am I going to really give the best result for the business when I'm not even in an environment where I can say I don't know? I don't really know how that supports myself or humanity, really, in any great way. So firstly, it's really allowing that space where it's okay to say, yeah, I haven't a clue. So one of the things that I learned from, I spent about 6 months living at an Ayurveda clinic while studying. And one of the things was really kind of that connection between the mind, body, and soul, and really observing for myself what was going on, and to explore those connections for myself. And, I realized I really actually wanted to explore much more around that. And it was a really good space in which to do that. So like the physical place was actually, the buildings and the land, but the space was, I had an Ayurveda doctor who guided me and left me to my own devices to have that space to explore and to question for myself. And he gave me that space to do it. And it was the first time I really questioned for myself what I was really doing with my life and why. So I've been suffering from chronic ill health, why I was really suffering from chronic ill health. And really, and space is also kind of, it's creating that place that's like really aligned to nature. Again, from spending so much time studying Ayurveda and being in India, it's really aligning back to those natural principles and the space within which that can occur. And it was really, for me, that really followed my own health journey as well. And that's why, for me, I really believe in the importance of just creating this space within which we can each question for ourselves, and also with each other in a community. I learned just as much from being with the patients at that clinic, as I did studying in the classroom. I have learned just as much in group activities with each other, as I do studying on my own. So it's really the space, the community space as well. And yeah, it's a combination of the space and the place, so when we're learning, we don't always want to be in the actual environment, but we kind of want to be in this test environment a lot of the times where we can actually explore, and we're not going to harm anybody, especially ourselves. And that's where I see there's really a big gap in the education system, the way it works at the moment, because for me, my experience, it was really much learning, subject by subject, and sitting behind a desk. And it doesn't really follow the reality of how I'm living that life. I don't go and I've never sat behind a desk and think I'm going to study me some history now and then study me some economics. That's not how I live my life. So I need that space to, Matt.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and just what you're saying, I think, is the system is set up to be one of competition, even where it's about grades, and it's not okay not to know. Whereas what I hear you saying is the nature of collaboration, and even a step further, radical collaboration. That we're going to learn so much more from each other than from any one person.
Yeah, absolutely. And Luna, when you were sharing about that sitting in the classroom, you were wondering what to do, and that itself was similar to what Matt shared about the 12-year-old girl. Why are we doing this? So I could easily connect. I mean, it's happening everywhere. So somewhere children do have this kind of feeling as to if they are into learning, what are they doing, why are they doing it, those thoughts always cross their minds.
And I think those very absolutely same thoughts cross the minds of all us adults who are sitting in a job which is the same as the classroom, with a boss which is the teacher, and being told to go out and, once a salesman. I saw a chat come here, once a teacher, always a learner, from the lady in the audience. Absolutely right. Once a salesman, always a consumer. The salesman in industry earns the biggest salary because they're doing the sales. You probably all know that. But they're the ones with the fastest cars and the biggest houses and the richest suits. So whatever industry you're in, we focus on teachers and students here, classrooms and schools. We haven't really focused on it, and that's not what we're about. But we know that we're sort of trying to resonate with the specific audience we've got today, with your audience. But no, Lynn, you're absolutely right. And I know John, within L2C, John, you structure this with our online sort of intranet where everyone joins and connects on an online community. But Luna, your role in this is to ensure that when we're offline, we're in life itself. The spaces we operate with, the hotel programs we've got rolling out learning centers across 80 countries in what are in effect hotel environments, that we don't convert that hotel environment, but that hotel environment for learning, when people come there as a learning center, has got that it's a place, but it's got that space around it that you're talking to, and that's really important.
Yeah, and it's a really good point that you bring up, David, really about the sort of more like the energetics and the feeling is very important. When you go to a place where you just feel safe and you feel calm and relaxed, that's kind of how in building out these learning centers, that for me it's really important that space is created where we feel it's okay. And so a large part of this is kind of exploring, well, what does it mean to create that space, and how do we sort of create that naturally?
Yes.
And that space, it's relevant for all decades. So it's not just, is this great for youngsters or school children or teenagers or parents or elders, that there is a community that naturally resonates, which I think we've forgotten. Back to your point, John, about origins, and I see we have this in Africa in the projects we're doing there, from villages to large cities. the resonance of that space only works when you've got a cross section of genders and generations, because that's how the humans operate. When that safety element, because you see all ages. Once you start to condense it down to all under 25s and over 18, there's a whole vast array of learning that doesn't enter that space.
Yeah.
So that's what LTTC is doing outside of that, which is why the space and the place is crucial to that energy you were mentioning, which comes back to your girl who said, I want to sing. That's the energy she wanted. Matt, your lady that said, what are we doing? It's not with my energy. This is crazy. But that's just an example of each of us as individuals, like you, Luna, in the boardroom, where they say, well, you can't say I don't understand or I don't know. That would be the energy you would generate from there is a complete out the room, leave.
Or can we change the environment of this room and sing and dance something?
Yeah.
So, Luna, would you like to share something on consumption?
Yeah. Consumption is a really interesting one, because there's so much about in the world today where it's much more about denial of consumption. We need to consume less. We need to reduce consumption. We got to say no to this type of product or service or activity that we're doing. And for me, it's that when you think about the entirety of the system, as soon as you're like shifting from doing less of something else is increasing or to take its place, because the system has to come back to equilibrium. So for me, talking about consumption is not about reducing less and saying no to things. It's our approach to consumption. It's the way we're consuming. It's the type of consuming that we're actually doing. So it's like the way that we're learning, the type of learning that we're getting involved with, which kind of links a little bit back to the space as well. And for me, the consumption, it's not even like this linear, like if I'm, to give a more environmental example, like if I reduce the amount of paper to save trees and go electronic, well, every email that I store, every document that I store is stored physically at a location that needs electricity to be stored. So that has another effect on other areas of the system. So it's not, consumption isn't as linear as we're sort of believing at the minute. It's much more kind of multidimensional, multifaceted. And so I think it's really important to discuss the type of learning in a multidimensional, multicultural, multi-generational approach to really understand, okay, so what type of consuming is going to be beneficial for ourselves, for humanity, and for the environment. And so it's really I love talking about like our approach to consumption in a really like macro perspective like that. That's why in LTTC it's you'll see we're cross-cultural, we're cross-generational, different genders, and it's a balance between that, so that we can really understand the different ways we are consuming, the different ways we are learning, and the different ways that we can learn, and the different approaches that we can learn.
And if I could just add, it's how each of these themes interfaces with each other, and so to see things in their columns, but also all completely tangled up, and what a beautiful web it is, and how this interacts with this.
Yeah, exactly. Because the consumption, the approaches to consuming, that is what generates the choices that you were discussing earlier as well. So it's all interlinked. And ethics comes into consuming, because is it actually what's beneficial for ourselves and for humanity. So there's always lots of crossovers.
Yeah. Thank you, Luna. I think Osita, it's from your background. Some noise is coming, so if you could please move
Yeah.
yourself. Thank you, Osita. David, now I'm coming to you.
Yes.
23 years ago, you had a dream, a vision. You woke up with a vision, right? That was learning in the 22nd century.
Yes.
So
I've
you
woken up.
have come a
I've woken up every day since as well.
brilliant, brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And it should be the way, that way only. And, you know, you have also spoken about that you are not an entrepreneur, but you are an environpreneur.
Hmm.
And, I looked up in the dictionary, I didn't find the meaning. Then I had to come back to you to understand the meaning. And you told me that environpreneur is all about generous giving. And that's what you're about. And entrepreneur means taking. So when we talk about this, how does it affect the health and prosperity, or is it related to the prosperity? And when we talk about health and prosperity embedded in L22C, or is it a separate thing? And David, you have been like a beacon of light. You have been like a guiding force for all of us in learning in the 22nd century. So we would be uh, really happy to hear from you what your thoughts are on health and prosperity.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. But the only reason for a beacon of light is that it's got many ships passing by who give it its purpose. So thank you for being a beacon
That's
of
great.
light. But it's everything that's flowing around, and maybe just the warning is we've got lots to learn. And I was fortunate enough to sort of come up with that, as I say, 20 or 30, 23 years ago, and I've been sort of practicing ever since, really. That entrepreneur and entrepreneur, the entrepreneur is sort of between taking is the sort of the word for entrepreneur, if you look at the literal. And environnement prévoir is around giving. And I just thought, okay,
Environnement. Okay.
environ prévoir is around the giving. I know it's bonkers, but we did. I know, but actually we're talking. I think Matt spoke about language. Who spoke about language? It is a different language that we've got to adopt, because so many words we use and phrases are all old and out of date. We're wearing the same clothes that we, in language perspective, we were in the 1950s. And things have changed, and you can spot it when you're not using the right phrases. And we're at a stage where you can spot it, where you use different words, different phraseology, and that's important. But health, you've asked me, how long have we got, Nina? Because I'm looking at the clock, so I don't want to run
Yeah.
over the time for the audience listening. So if you give me some direction, I can proceed down to meet the audience's time frame. What's
So
your guidance?
we can go ahead with another 10-15 minutes, David.
Okay, fine. So yeah, health. The last two, or the two of the other 11 pillars of L22C are health and prosperity. There's a specific order that we've spoken about today. We started with John with origins and language, and then Asita ethics and people, Matt choices and learning, Luna with space and place and consumption, and it sort of rounds up with health and then prosperity. Because if we haven't got them in that order, then the conversation gets disjointed, because you can always go back to the origins if you're in conflict about learning something. Let's go back to the origins. If you're in conflict about choice or consumption, for example, that's one that's on everyone's tongues at the moment, what we're burning and learning, doing. You can always go back to ethics, which I think Luna did. You can always go back to people. Well, I haven't got gas, so therefore I have to use electric, so I have no choice. Or the whole of the themes that we've been through today are logical, and they form the backbone of L2C. We believe that those themes will change as we move forward, but we're always going to have origins. We're always going to have language. Ethics are always going to play a part. Choices are what we want in life. Learning, we've mentioned that, and breathing. Space and place, there's always going to be spaces and places that we're in. They're always going to be changing. We're always going to be consuming, maybe less, maybe differently. We need health, above all. We need good health. And from that comes prosperity. And so the logic of what we've been speaking about in a conversational way has got a strict logic to it. And as we said earlier, the rules are there's no rules. We can speak about these themes in any context at any time, but just be aware of where it fits. So the last two, which is health, and the last one, prosperity. Without health, we can't go anywhere. And you, with L2C, you bring to L2C your health. So if you're vibrant, you're wise, you've got vision. Back to your original statement, Nina, uncertainty and excitement. That is your health. Your health for learning is those 4 ingredients. Do you have to be able to, forgive me, walk? No. If you're disabled in any way, shape, or form, do you have to be able to see? No. So health doesn't restrict us in any way, shape, or form. We have the Olympics, I think we all know, where we have the Paralympics.
And what about prosperity?
Sorry?
What about prosperity then?
Well, prosperity is what comes from, I mean, to be healthy is to be prosperous, isn't it? It's an element of our life. And the health within L2C, if we're healthy at work, we're healthy at play, we're healthy at home, we're healthy at night, but we're not. We've all got an out of balance health element around our job, or relationships, or children have grown up, loneliness, all sorts of things can be rattled up into this word health. And I think Matt mentioned it in his session there about we have to feel comfortable in what we're doing when we're learning, and we have to be in a space, like Luna said, that's healthy, conducive to what we're trying to learn or be aware of. And so health is really important. And one of the things that we're finding that is coming out of L2C is when someone is feeling unhealthy about a certain aspect of their life, then share that, because there's wisdom here that sympathizes with that and says, yeah, that's the risk-free audience we're in. And in joining L2C, part of the journey in getting engaged with what we're doing is understanding yourself, your self-health, your self-wealth, which I've just seen someone say, health is wealth. Absolutely. Without it, everything else is quite difficult. So
hasn't, David, society or majority of people, they associate prosperity with money. And here it's like, it's health is prosperity, and then you move forward. So is money a part of prosperity, or is it just health, or is it a combination?
Well, I think there's 2 questions there. One, prosperity is can be all things to all people. So money is part of it. Yes, I mean, to be prosperous because I haven't got to go to work 6 days a week for 10 hours a day, and is it prosperous to have more free time? People want time. That's one of the elements of consumption. Our life consumes our time, and so is it prosperous to be just surviving in life with all these desires, or is it prosperous to have £1 million where everything just comes in abundance and you have no friends? Or not that anyone with £1 million has got no friends, but you know what I mean. What is prosperity? What is missing? And what are you grateful for? And that's different for everybody. And I think within L22C, I mean, Osita, you know, for me, it's a huge contrast. You know, I live in the UK. I live near London. What does that mean? It just, that's my location. Do I have any awareness of, you know, for example, Nigeria, where Osita's, you know, I'm learning so much from his experiences there. It's such a contrasting lifestyle. But who's prosperous? And I know who I think is prosperous. I think it's not me. There's so much that I would prosper from having elements of elsewhere, other people's lifestyles, when you get to know them and understand them. So this prosperity that we talk about in L22C actually resonates with every single subject and every single element that we choose to discuss. And we discuss many things. Not only do we discuss, prosperity comes from actually tasking, doing something, making something happen, if that makes sense. You know, this is not just a talking arena in L22C. It's about understanding what we need to learn, what people, John mentioned this, you know, what are we good at? What do we love doing? What does the world need? Your society, your community, your town, and what can I be paid for, my worth? What can I be rewarded for? And money is one reward, but there are many other elements of reward that prosperity brings. And in L22C, if you're short of time, okay, we can show you how other people have an abundance of time. If you're short of money, there's other people who can share, well, I have an abundance of money. And it's always this balance between, and we always talk about balanced perspectives. There's no yin and yang, black and white, up or down, in and out, big or small. It's that in the middle where the joy happens, where the happiness happens, and where the interconnectedness happens around prosperity. And we have models in L22C, which everything we do moves towards creating new opportunities and new choices that we can get involved in.
There's a question on the chat, David. I would like to know how I can get involved with L22C.
Okay. I get involved. That's a good question. I think get engaged would be a good word, but I understand involved. Engaging with L22C, I suppose the short answer to that is, you know, I don't like this one, but go to the website, which is here somewhere, and connect with us. But what we say in L22C is nobody joins us, we join them. So whatever it is that you're doing, that there's a spark of interest or curiosity around what we're doing, we're happy to join you by sharing with you what we do. And if you then fit with that and it resonates with you as an individual, then you will become involved. To use that word, you'll become involved. You'll get, because we say you won't get L22C.
It'll get you.
Thank you, man. It'll get you. And if it gets you, then guess what? You're involved or you're engaged. And you have to be involved and engaged with an understanding, which will take time, of what we're doing here, because it's quite different. And it's that time, and it's not long, 1 hour a week. If you get really proficient and get engaged in L22C, 3 or 4 hours a week, speaking and talking and creating all sorts of ideas that can bring prosperity, bring better health, can be consumed in a different way. You're working in a space and place that's risk-free and comfortable. Your choices are coming past you, around you from all different angles. You're learning all sorts of stuff without realizing. You're around people, because that's the core principle. People, that's That's our ingredient or our product, shall we say, in L2C, just us and what we don't know. You bring your ethics, you understand what our ethics are, you speak a language if in fitting in with what we're doing, and you'll start to understand your own origins and the origins of L22C. And if they mold and fit together, that's when the magic happens. And it doesn't matter what age or where you are, what you want to learn, and who you want to learn from, it can be found here. And we believe that is the foundations for learning towards the 22nd century.
Thank you, David, for such amazing perspective on health and prosperity. And you kind of summed up the entire program of today. Before we close for the evening, would you like to sum up and share some more about L22C, and then we just move ahead and close?
Okay, what a 1 minute summary. I think the last sort of hour and 30 minutes, if something has resonated with you, then investigate further. That's really what we're all doing. Within L2C, we're something resonates, it sparks an idea, we capture it, it comes from nowhere. We say, that's a good idea. What did you say? What did you mean? And in those conversations that we have around the world with people, that's where the ingenuity is sparked, is spawned. And those of us who are brave enough say, okay, let's take that further. And we take that idea, that learning, and we look deeper into it. We have a program called Assemblies, which John mentioned at the start. We coming together of certain people, different perspectives, and we'll take an idea which we think is good for the world, what the world needs, and it's exciting. We'll study it. We'll take it through a series of programs with you and with others, and we end up creating actual entities, actually doing something. We have a little phrase in L22C. It's called talk, task, talk, but we spell the second talk TORQUE. If you understand what that means, it means putting movement into, energy into. So we talk, yes, but we all go and do tasks from what we've learned, and we come back and things have happened. And I think Matt mentioned this, certainly Osito, if he didn't, I know that's what we're doing in Africa. Things are happening. So we make things happen in L22C in a very part-time basis, very part-time way. And
things are happening for me also. Since the time I have joined, I received a random email from David one day, and it was just we met on Zoom, and whatever he said, it was like, about learning and life, and something just clicked. Not and every meeting with you, David, every meeting at L22C, I have learned throughout. I mean, whether it be origins, language, the four pillars, that is wisdom, vision, excitement, uncertainty. I feel so belonged to be over here, and talking about learning, the evolving nature of learning, and also not just in this setup, that is when we meet on for our assembly, that is on Fridays. You know it, that I have spoken to people, to strangers, to friends, and around the campfire experience that I shared with you, and how people get intrigued, people want to know more about what's this learning in the 22nd century. We are in the 21st century, we're going to die, we're not even going to see what's going to happen in 22nd.
Your 2-year-old granddaughter, if you've got one, will be looking forward to their 80th birthday in the 22nd century.
Yeah. So throughout, it has been a learning experience, great learning experience. And thank you to all the panelists over here. Each one of you, I think you have contributed so much for all the listeners, and the listeners who are going to listen and view this afterwards also. I'm sure they will also benefit from each word what you have spoken, the anecdotes that you have shared. They were just amazing. So in the end, I just want to say to everyone, trust the process and believe that life doesn't take away anything from us unless there is something immediately awaiting its replacement. Thank you once again, and bye bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nina.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Nina.
Thank you.
Good to chat.
Thank you.
Good to learn.
Thank you.
Yes, great. Thank you, everyone.